All right, so welcome back. For those of you who are back for more on these racing rules sailing changes, you're in the right place. You're obviously serious about getting those mark roundings dialed in this season.
Definitely crucial.
So we are diving back into Rule 18, Mark Room, looking at the changes for 2025 to 2028. And, again, a big part of these updates is making the rules more clear and reflecting how sailors already interpret them out on the water. And hopefully making for smoother racing.
Less arguing.
Less arguing, exactly. More racing. So we covered definitions and the preamble and just like the very basics of Rule 18 in the last deep dive. So today we're jumping right into the kind of trickier parts, 18.3 and 18.4.
Yeah, we're getting into the nitty-gritty today.
Yes.
Right.
Those are the ones that people are really kind of wondering about.
Those are the tactical ones, yeah.
Yeah.
Where you can, get an edge.
Exactly. Okay, so let's start with 18.3, tacking in the zone. And so this is broken down into two subsections, and they deal specifically with, you guessed it, what happens when you decide to tack inside the zone. And here's where things get really interesting. This rule has gone through a few iterations over the years.
It has, yeah. So way back when, before 2017, it basically discouraged tacking in the zone altogether.
Right.
And then in 2017, 2020, they tried to address that, and then they kind of created some unintended consequences.
Yeah.
So the new 2025 version is really aiming to make it a lot more simple and predictable.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a theme, is like we're reflecting how sailors already interpret it, and we're making things simpler.
Right.
So help me visualize this. Okay, so what's a really typical scenario where 18.3 comes into play, and how does this new rule handle that scenario?
Okay, so you're approaching a mark to be left to port. So you're on starboard tack. You're happily fetching the mark. You've been on that tack since entering the zone. And suddenly, a port tack boat tacks inside the zone. So now what happens? So that's where it gets interesting.
Yeah, and I know from the old rule that there was some debate about whether or not that port tack boat, even though they tacked in the zone, might still be entitled to mark room.
Right.
So is this where the mystery is solved?
This is exactly what this new rule clarifies.
Mm-hmm.
Approaching the mark and you're on starboard and you're fetching, you're good. If you're the port tack boat, okay, well, I can't just tack in the zone and expect to get mark room.
Yeah, I like that. Predictability is huge because that means fewer protests, right? Less time arguing, more time racing.
Less time arguing.
Which is what we want.
Okay.
Now, I'm curious. So is there anything else in this rule that's kind of nuanced?
Well, yeah. There's a nuance. So the two subsections of 18.3. So, where it talks about not forcing the other boat above close hauled and giving mark room if they become overlapped inside.
So thinking as a racer, if I'm coming into a port hand mark on starboard tack and someone tacks in the zone to windward of me, I can relax knowing that I'm still entitled to mark room.
You're good.
Okay.
You're good. And, that other boat, the port tack boat, they know that they can't just use that late tack in the zone to force you into a compromising position.
That's great. That's a great example. So, just understanding these nuances of the rule can really give you a tactical advantage out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, before we move on, I also want to point out that the new rule is formatted a little bit differently. It's broken down into those kind of two clear subsections.
Right.
Is that intentional?
Yeah, I think clarity is really key, especially when you're trying to remember a rule under pressure. Out there, in the heat of the moment, you need to, be able to digest the rule and apply it.
Okay, yeah, I got it. That makes perfect sense. Okay, now on to Rule 18.4, jabing in the zone. Interestingly, the rule text itself hasn't actually changed.
Yeah, it's just the title.
Just the title. What's so important about a title change?
Well, think about it. So we just talked about 18.3, tacking in the zone.
Yeah.
And now we have 18.4, jibing in the zone.
Right.
So just seeing those titles right next to each other, that kind of tells you right away that they deal with very similar situations.
Okay.
And it's just about, making it easier to recall on the fly. So it's like having a well-organized toolbox.
I like that. Yeah.
Everything's got its place. You know where to grab the tool that you need when you need it.
Right. So if you're in the heat of the moment, you don't have to sift through a bunch of, jumbled mess in your head to try to find the rule that applies. It's like right there. Okay, I like that. So it's really just about improving that user friendliness overall.
Yeah, making it more intuitive.
Got it. But what does Rule 18.4 actually do? Paint me a picture.
All right. So imagine you're the inside boat, overlapped with another boat as you're approaching a mark. You've got right of way, But to sail your proper course around the mark, you need to jibe.
Okay, so I'm kind of in a bind because I have right of way, but I need to maneuver to actually sail my course.
Right. So what's to stop you from just jibing way out?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Jibing way out, away from the mark, and gaining a huge advantage.
Right, so it's like you're using that jibe to sort of like, almost like cheat a little bit.
Yeah, it's a loophole.
Mhm.
And this is what 18.4 prevents. So it says, even though you need to jibe, you can't sail any farther from the mark than is absolutely necessary to make that jibe. Okay? You
Right.
can't use the jibe as an excuse to sail extra distance away from the mark.
Got it. Okay, so it's just, again, about making it fair and preventing these sort of, sneaky tactics.
Exactly.
Now, just to clarify, this primarily applies when you're inside and overlapped, right? Like if I'm the outside boat, this doesn't apply to me.
Correct. If you're the outside boat, you're good.
Okay, good. Now, there's that little kind of caveat at the end about gate marks.
Oh, yeah, good catch, yeah.
What's that about?
So gate marks are a little bit different because with a gate, you have two marks.
Right.
So you have options. And so the logic of 18.4, you can't sail extra distance while jibing, doesn't really apply in that situation.
Okay, so because you're not constrained to rounding a single mark,
Yeah.
you have more flexibility. Okay.
Exactly. You have options.
Yeah.
So that little exception, it basically just reinforces the purpose of the rule,
Yeah.
which is it's all about maintaining fairness.
Right, so it's like preventing, you having to sail farther than you have to.
Yeah.
I see how that works. So it's really important to not just, we talk about this all the time. It's not just memorizing the rules, but it's actually understanding the why behind them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about the why, the intent of the rule.
Right. And that's what allows you to apply them effectively in all these, crazy racing scenarios that come up.
Yeah.
Well, we've covered a lot today all about this new Rule 18. And don't forget, we've got a link to the full updated RRS in the show notes, so make sure to check it out and get familiar with all the changes. Something to think about as you review these rules and picture yourself out on the race course. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the updated racing rules of sailing. Until next time, fair winds and following seas.
Fair winds.